Here is a discussion of love and loss from a novel by Philip K. Dick. Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said, published in 1974. From Chapter 11. I just don't see how you could. Jason said, There are different kinds of love. Like Emily Fusselman's rabbit. She glanced up at him. A woman I knew, married with 3 kids. She had 2 kittens, and then she got one of those big gray Belgian rabbits that go lipperty on those huge hind legs. For the first month, the rabbit was afraid to come out of his cage. It was a he, we think, as best we could tell. Then after a month, he would come out of his cage and hop around the living room. After 2 months, he learned to climb the stairs and scratch on Emily's bedroom door to wake her up in the morning. Then he started playing with the cats. And there the trouble began, because he wasn't as smart as a cat. Rabbits have smaller brains, Jason said. Ruth Ray said, Hard by. Anyhow, he adored the cats and tried to do everything they did. He even learned to use the cat box most of the time. Using tufts of hair he pulled from his chest, he made a nest behind the couch and wanted the kittens to get into it. But they never would. The end of it all, nearly, came when he tried to play gotcha with a German shepherd that some lady brought over. You see, the rabbit learned to play this game with the cats and with Emily Fusselman and the children, where he'd hide behind the couch and then come running out, running very fast in circles, and everyone tried to catch him. But they usually couldn't, and then he'd run back to safety behind the couch, where no one was supposed to follow. But the dog didn't know the rules of the game, and when the rabbit ran back behind the couch, the dog went after him and snapped its jaws around the rabbit's rear end. Emily managed to pry the dog's jaws open, and she got the dog outside, but the rabbit was badly hurt. He recovered, but after that he was terrified of dogs and ran away if he saw one, even through the window. And the part of him the dog bit, he kept that part hidden behind the drapes, because he had no hair there and was ashamed. But what was so touching about him was his pushing against the limits of his, what would you say, physiology? His limitations as a rabbit, trying to become a more evolved life form like the cats, wanting all the time to be equal with them and play with them. That's all there is to it, really. The rabbits wouldn't stay in the nest he built for them, and the dog didn't know the rules and got him. He lived several years, but who would have thought that a rabbit could develop such a complex personality? And when you were sitting on the couch, and he wanted you to get off, so he could lie down, he'd nudge you, and then if you didn't move, he'd bite you. But look at the aspirations of that rabbit, and look at his failing. A little life trying, and all the time it was hopeless. But the rabbit didn't know that. Or maybe he did know and kept trying anyhow. But I think he didn't understand. He just wanted to do it so badly. It was his whole life because he loved the cats. I thought you didn't like animals, Jason said. Not anymore. Not after so many defeats and wipeouts. Like the rabbit, he eventually, of course, died. Emily Fusselman cried for days, a week. I could see what it had done to her, and I didn't want to get involved. But stopping loving animals so entirely so that their lives are so short. Just so fucking goddamn short. Okay, some people lose a creature they love and then go on and transfer that love to another one. But it hurts. It hurts. Then why is love so good? He had brooded about that, in and out of his own relationships, all his long adult life. He brooded about it acutely now. Through what had recently happened to him, up to Emily Fusselman's rabbit, this moment of painfulness. You love someone and they leave. They come home one day and start packing their things, and you say, "What's happening?" And they say, "I got a better offer someplace else," and there they go, out of your life forever, And after that, until you're dead, you're carrying around this huge hunk of love with no one to give it to. And if you do find someone to give it to, the same thing happens all over. Or you call them up on the phone and one day and say, "This is Jason," and they say, "Who?" And then you know you've had it. They don't know who the hell you are. So I guess they never did know. You never had them in the first place. Ruth said, "Love isn't just wanting another person the way you want to own an object you see in a store. That's just desire. You want to have it around, take it home and set it up somewhere in the apartment like a lamp. Love is," she paused, reflecting, "like a father saving his children from a burning house, getting them out and dying himself. When you love, you cease to live for yourself. You live for another person." And that's good? It did not sound so good to him. It overcomes instinct. Instincts push us into fighting for survival. Like the polls ringing all the campuses. Survival of ourselves at the expense of others. Each of us claws his way up. I can give you a good example. My 21st husband, Frank, we were married 6 months. During that time, he stopped loving me and became horribly unhappy. I still loved him. I wanted to remain with him, but it was hurting him, so I let him go. You see, it was better for him, and because I loved him, that's what counted. See? Jason said, "But why is it good to go against the instinct for self-survival?" "You don't think I can say." "No," he said. "Because the instinct for survival loses in the end. With every living creature, mole, bat, human, frog, even frogs who smoke cigars and play chess. You can never accomplish what your survival instinct sets out to do, so ultimately your striving ends in failure, and you succumb to death, and that ends it. But if you love, you can fade out and watch." "I'm not ready to fade out," Jason said. "You can fade out and watch with happiness, and with cool, mellow, alpha contentment, the highest form of contentment, the living on of one of those you love." "But they die too," said Jason. "True," Ruth Ray chewed on her lip. "It's better not to love, so that never happens to you. Even a pet, a dog, or a cat, as you pointed out, you love them, and they perish. If the death of a rabbit is bad—" He had then a glimpse of horror, the crushed bones and hair of a girl held and licking blood in the jaws of a dimly seen enemy outlooming any dog. "But you can grieve," Ruth said, anxiously studying his face. "Jason, grief is the most powerful emotion a man or child or animal can feel. It's a good feeling." "In what fucking way?" he said harshly. "Grief causes you to leave yourself. You step outside your narrow little pelt. And you can't feel grief unless you've had love before it. Grief is the final outcome of love, because it's love lost. You do understand, I know you do, but you just don't want to think about it. It's the cycle of love completed. To love, to lose, to feel grief, to leave, and then to love again. Jason, grief is awareness that you will have to be alone. And there is nothing beyond that, because being alone is the ultimate final destiny of each individual living creature. That's what death is, the great loneliness. I remember once when I first smoked pot from a water pipe rather than a joint. The smoke was cool, and I didn't realize how much I had inhaled. All of a sudden, I died. For a little instant, but several seconds long. The world, every sensation, including even the awareness of my own body, of even having a body, faded out. And it didn't leave me in isolation in the usual sense, because when you're alone in the usual sense, you still have some sense data coming in, even if it's only from your own body. But even the darkness went away. Everything just ceased. Silence, nothing, alone. They must have soaked it in one of those toxic things. That used to burn out so many people back then. Yes, I'm lucky I ever got my head back. A freak thing. I had smoked pot a lot of times before, and that never happened. That's why I do tobacco now after that. Anyhow, it wasn't like fainting. I didn't feel I was going to fall, because I had nothing to fall with, no body. And there was no down to fall toward. Everything, including myself, she gestured, expired, like the last drop out of a bottle. And then presently they rolled the film again, the feature we call reality. She paused, puffing on her tobacco cigarette. I never told anyone about it before. Were you frightened about it? She nodded. Consciousness of unconsciousness, if you dig what I mean. When we do die, we won't feel it because that's what dying is, the loss of all that. So, for example, I'm not at all scared of dying anymore, not after that bad trip. But to grieve, it's to die and be alive at the same time. The most absolute, overpowering experience you can feel, therefore. Sometimes I swear we weren't constructed to go through such a thing. It's too much. Your body damn near self-destructs with all that heaving and surging. But I want to feel grief, to have tears. Why? He couldn't grasp it. To him it was something to be avoided. When you felt that, you got the hell out fast. Ruth said, Grief reunites you with what you've lost. It's a merging. You go with the loved thing or person that's going away. In some fashion, you split yourself and accompany it. Go part of the way with it on its journey. You follow it as far as you can go. I remember one time when I had this dog I loved. I was roughly 17 or 18, just around the age of consent, that's how I remember. The dog got sick, and we took him to the vets. They said he had eaten rat poison, and was nothing more than a sack of blood inside, and the next 24 hours would determine if he'd survive. I went home and waited, and then around 11 p.m. I crashed. The vet was going to phone me in the morning, when he got there, to tell me if Hank had lived through the night. I got up at 8:30 and tried to get it all together in my head, waiting for the call. I went into the bathroom. I wanted to brush my teeth, and I saw Hank at the bottom left part of the room. He was slowly, in a very measured, dignified fashion, climbing invisible stairs. I watched him go upward diagonally as he trudged, and then at the top right margin of the bathroom he disappeared, still climbing. He didn't look back once. I knew he had died. And then the phone rang, and the vet told me that Hank was dead. But I saw him going upward. And of course I felt terrible, overwhelming grief, and as I did so, I lost myself and followed along with him, up the fucking stairs. Both of them stayed silent for a time. But finally, Ruth said, clearing her throat, the grief goes away, and you phase back into this world without him. And you can accept that. What the hell choice is there? You cry, you continue to cry because you don't ever completely come back from where you went with him. A fragment broken off your pulsing, pumping heart is there still. A nick out of it, a cut that never heals. And if, when it happens to you over and over again in life, too much of your heart does finally go away, and then you can't feel grief anymore, and then you yourself are ready to die. You'll walk up the inclined ladder, and someone else will remain behind grieving for you. There are no cuts in my heart, Jason said. If you split now, Ruth said huskily, but with composure unusual for her, that's the way it'll be for me right then and there. I'll stay until tomorrow, he said. It would take at least until then for the Pole Lab to discern the spuriousness of his ID cards. This ends the reading. Thank you for listening.